Upcycling is a great way to get fabric for some of your smaller sewing jobs, such as making doll clothes or making, small little accessories. So I am going to show you how to make the most of your upcycled fabric. I have a t-shirt right here, and you know, you can find t-shirts at tag sales. You can look in your closet and see what you don't want. It's always nice if you have something that's unwanted and it still has some pretty nice fabric in it. You can always reuse that fabric and keep it out of a landfill. So I have my shirt, I have a pair of scissors, and I have a seam ripper. First thing I want to do is turn the shirt inside out because I want to see all of the seams. All right. As you can see, it has a seam that connects the band to the top. And I'm going to try to save as much of this band as possible because some small sewing projects can take advantage of this little stretchy cotton band that comes at the top of t-shirts. It's not quite exactly the same as the fabric in the rest of the shirt. It's a little bit stretchier. So it's good. It has its uses. And so we've got the band, we've got the shoulder seams, we've got the seams that go around the sleeves. And I'm not going to take out the hems because I'm going to use most of this fabric probably for doll clothes. And whenever I can possibly do it, I like to use the hem that's already in the fabric. I guess I'm just lazy, but yeah, it saves me from having to do a hem. Okay, so seams around the sleeves, seams down the sides. Some t-shirts don't have seams in the sides, but this one does. And like I said, gonna leave the bottom hem where it is. Usually when I'm starting on a t-shirt, I like to start around the neckband. And it's got this extra little piece of fabric around, and I can take that off. I'm using a seam ripper right now. Now, some t-shirts, they've got them locked up like Fort Knox. They have so many teeny tiny little seams in them that, I have another way of getting to those seams. But because I want to make as much of the shirt usable as possible, I'm going to try to get as much out with the seam ripper as possible. Now, a lot of people have a lot of ideas on use of seam rippers. Some people say put in the pointy end. Some people say put in the end with the red ball. In my opinion, the right way to do it is the way that works best for you. You have to experiment a little bit and figure it out. So you probably see me doing it both ways. I have found where the threads are. And I'm just going in and trying to break little threads using the blade on this seam ripper. And I break and pull. I don't pull too hard. I'm just trying to break the threads and coax the seam apart. And as you can see, this can be a pretty long process, especially if you plan to use the seam ripper for the whole shirt, which in this example, I'm not going to use the seam ripper for the whole shirt. But because it's a video about taking things apart, it would have been bad for me not to show you the seam ripper first. Some people like to be super detail oriented, or they'll sit down in front of the television set with whatever it is they're working on and kind of go at it while they're watching TV. And that works. Right now, I've been pretty lucky with this. I haven't put any holes in my fabric yet, so I'm pretty happy about that. Sometimes You know, the wind is going the right direction and you get lucky and you can take that little seam ripper and go quite a ways and break lots of little threads at once. Just tread carefully because you don't want to put giant rips into the fabric if you can avoid it. There, I got a good one there. Something satisfying about, taking apart somebody else's really hard work. Okay, there I go making jokes, and then I hit a bad spot. You see, I'm using the seam ripper both ways. I use it one way for a while, then I get tired of it, and I flip it around and use it the other way. Okay, there we go. Getting that little bit of gray fabric off. Okay, thank you, Hanes, for making a shirt that was easy to take apart, because oftentimes it's this neckband area that's a real pain to get apart. Okay. As you go, you're going to come across all of these little threads. Try to keep them away from where an animal or a small person might stick it in their mouth, because it's really, really bad to be eating thread. All right. Gonna see if I get as lucky with this neckband. Start very slowly. Just snipping it in and trying to cut a couple of threads at a time, pulling apart. I've used these little neckbands to make waistbands for circle skirts that I've made for dolls. And their little bit of stretchiness is actually really handy for that. Also, you can use them to make neckbands for small t-shirts. Okay. Because I don't want this video to be 3 hours long, I'm going to do most of this disassembly off camera. I'm just showing you how to get started, and then I'll jump ahead. But as you can see, it is coming off, and I will continue to try to preserve this neckband because it's good stuff. Now, moving on to some of the other seams. Like I said, you can use the seam ripper on these, but as long as you are careful, you can still get a lot of fabric out of them, even if you just take your scissors and cut right at the seam. You're going to be surprised at how much fabric you end up with and how many things you can make with it. Just cutting this sleeve off. I don't want this seam in my fabric. Otherwise, I would just be cutting chunks out. But I want to keep as much fabric as possible. Another thing that you can do is you can just cut out pieces of the t-shirt as you need to use them. But I kind of like to disassemble them because then when I'm laying out pattern pieces, I can kind of plan things out a little bit better and say, oh, this is going to fit perfectly on that former sleeve. And that way I'm using the fabric to its potential. I'm not wasting a lot of fabric. And the whole point here in repurposing fabric is to try to keep things out of the landfill. Try to salvage things as much as we can. So getting the sleeve taken care of. Watch out for your fingers. All right. And I'm going to do that little seam right there. Look at that. That is a pretty good sized piece of fabric. So I'm going to cut up the rest of the shirt off camera, and then I will show you what I end up with. All right, this is what we've ended up with. We have our seams, all of the little threads that came out. You know, this is a lot better than throwing away the whole shirt. However, you can use these little scraps like this for stuffing if you make stuffed animals or like a stuffed pincushion. Here is the band from around the neck, the ribbing, and that can be used many ways. There are very few holes in it, and I can work around those holes. This is the little gray piece, and that too might come in handy for something, so we'll keep that with the ribbing. The two sleeves, that is a nice little piece of fabric that you can cut smaller pieces out of. And then finally, here's the front. It's going to look a little different because this was a V-neck t-shirt. All right, so you've got a big piece of fabric here. This will be good for a lot of different projects, and then an even bigger piece from the back. You can make a lot of stuff out of this. So thank you for watching the video, and I hope it was helpful.